Hello, SonicBlu Darkfold here, and why am I juggling all these spices? I'll tell you why. We got so many of them to work with. Check this out. We got basil, we got Italian seasoning, which also has basil in it, but I decided a little bit more basil couldn't hurt. And we got ground or leaf oregano, we got thyme leaves, we got garlic salt, we got sea salt, we got pepper. What are we doing tonight with all these seasonings? Well, that's not it. We also got ditalini. This is a interesting noodle that is basically like an elbow macaroni, but very small, see? That's ditalini. And meatballs, chicken broth, leaf spinach, carrots, and navy beans. You can also add a can of tomatoes. In fact, I think we only need one can of leaf spinach, but we'll see how this recipe goes because, folks, dress in something nice, get a tuxedo, and get a wedding dress out because we are going to attend an Italian wedding. I don't mean that kind of Italian wedding. I'm talking about the Italian wedding where we marry two different things together into one meal. And we're marrying together the vegetable and the meatballs. We're going to combine all of these great things into one recipe called Italian wedding, and it's a soup. Then it's another example of there are no wrong ways to prepare Italian wedding soup. All you need to remember are the key ingredients: meatballs, spinach, and broth. Those are the three ingredients. Anything else you add to it can be anything in the world. You can add lima beans. Ugh, I hate lima beans. So we start by adding chicken broth to the stock pot. Now I only had just a little smidgen of chicken broth there. So get out another thing of chicken broth, and what we're going to do is we're going to add about 4 cups worth of chicken broth, which is an entire carton, and that little bit extra should not hurt. So this is going to be some good soup. Turn this on and get it boiling. Now, what we need to do first, folks, is make sure that if you're using canned spinach, to drain off any of the spinach juice. Drip, 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 drip. Don't be such a drip. Take a wild trip, man. Yeah, pour all that spinach juice out of there. It's gonna be a meal fit for Popeye himself. Oh, Popeye! Oh, olives. Now, there's one can. Mostly drained spinach. Just gonna compress all of that down and get as much of that juice out of there as possible. Okay, that should do it. 2. Shoot, this one's full, right? I can get a little more water out of there. Okay. Now we are also going to add onion to this recipe as well. Okay, always make sure before you're cutting vegetables of any kind to make sure you have a sharp knife. And if you don't, pull out one of these. It's a feather. Go back and forth a few times on the feather. Sharpen that right up. Okay. Now, let's begin by cutting our onion. Oh yeah, that did it. I helped sharpen that up real good. Instead of dicing it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make long pieces of onion. And that's pretty much what we need. Just probably about 1/2 of that onion. That's all we need. And in order to make long pieces, all you got to do is just do like this. Just take it all apart in their rings. And this is basically how you would make onion rings if you had the batter. And onion rings are really good. Love onion rings. I'll have to make beer batter onion rings sometime. I still got the beer. I can still make the batter. Okay. Removing all these rings down. And perfect. Now, you don't really even need a knife. I mean, pretty much just open them, tear them in half, just like that. Open it, tear it in half. Do the same thing for all your rings. Just tear them right in half. I like long pieces of onion. There you go. There you go. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take some extra virgin olive oil and we are going to add these to a skillet. We're going to saute these onions. And these little guys, they can just stay as is if you want to, but just kind of I mean, you don't even need a knife for this. Just kind of break them in half like that. And like so. And like this. Like that. 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 And like so. And bada bingo. Okay, you're heating up nicely. Let's get a skillet out. You know what? That's not too much. I don't need a big skillet. I just need a medium-sized skillet. And we got one down here. Okay, here it is. It's just perfect for these onions. Look at that. Take some extra virgin olive oil, turn this on to high, and then just splash down some extra virgin OO down into there. And now, knife, we don't need it anymore. Get out a spoon, if we have a spoon. It's probably because they're all over here. I'll use this one. Okay. Now turn this on to the highest flame that you can find and give those a good stir. And what we're going to do is we're going to saute these onions until they're nice and very, very, very soft. And all we're using is just one regular yellow onion. So let that saute, let that cook up, and that'll cook up just fine. While that's happening, let's go ahead and add our seasonings to that broth. We start with a good half of a teaspoon of a mixture of Italian seasoning blends. That you got your marjoram, you got your basil, you got paprika, or not paprika, you got oregano, you got all that other good stuff in there. And then let's add a little extra basil for good measure. But not to the broth, to your onion. There you go. We're going to season our onion with some basil. And all it takes is just a pinch of basil. Now, back to the broth. Salt. You need salt so that way your soup does not turn out too bland. The salt will also prevent your ditalini from accumulating too much starch in your water. We're also going to add garlic salt. We're adding about a quarter teaspoon of each salt, maybe even half a teaspoon of this garlic salt. And if I had onion salt, I would add it. Let's add just a little bit more oregano to that. Okay, that's just a pinch. Alright, since we're using the same ingredients, give those a stir into your broth. And, not to be forgetting, fresh ground pepper. Yep. Good. Oh yes, I forgot about thyme. How could I forget about you, thyme? Add some thyme leaves to your broth too. We're adding about a quarter teaspoon of thyme. There you go. Right on. Let's give these onions a stir now and get this basil mixed in. I love cooking with basil. It smells so good. Okay. Now that's going to be real hot, so watch out. Now, we are ready for adding the meatballs. Will be next. Since we have two or 3 or 4, probably yield about 4 servings worth. You might actually be using this whole thing of meatballs. But you know how many meatballs your family likes. There is no real set ingredient list on how many meatballs to add, just that you know how many meatballs you know your family can eat. Okay, let's go ahead and start off with that and see how far we come along on meatballs. Okay, next, go ahead and we'll add our vegetables last because it doesn't take long for them to cook, but it does take a while for our ditalini to cook. Now remember, ditalini will be cooking up just nicely. We'll use about 8 ounces of ditalini. That's about 8 ounces there. Maybe even 10 ounces, I believe. But that's okay. Like I said, there is no real way to make this stuff, and we were only going to plan on using 8 ounces of that anyway. So 8 to 10 ounces of ditalini. Give it a stir so that way it breaks them up. Okay. Because the longest items that are going to cook in your Italian wedding soup are going to be the ditalini and your meatballs. And you don't even have to add ditalini. That's the funny thing. You don't have to add ditalini. It's going to be hot and this grease is going to be jumping, so watch out. Especially when you use the same spoon to stir that broth. And that's going to get into your oil and it's going to make that oil jump around like crazy. So give it a good swish. Uh-oh, get back in there. Ooh, hot. Remember, if you can't stand the heat, then don't do what I just did. Alright. In another moment, and we'll be adding those onions. With the oil, we're just spooning it out into our broth here. We might even let that sit in the hot oil for a little while as we go to our next sliced carrots. Now, you want to add, first you want to plug in the can opener. There we go. Now, the order of the vegetables that you need to add, and we'll be covering them as we go along right here. First, your sliced carrots. You can also use baby carrots that you find fresh in the grocery store, in the bags in your groceries produce section. Drain off, if you're using the cans, drain off your carrots. You don't want any carrot juice in there, just drain all of that out of there. And then, add it to your soup. I'm going to add 1 full can. There we go. Perfect. And use a spoon to stir it up. This is what we call Italian wedding. We're marrying 2 things together into one. I'm going to turn off our onions here real quick, because that is perfect. Look at that. Got a nice singeing of your onion here. There. All the way around. And that's going to be nice and sauteed. Now, there, once again, is no real wrong way to saute your onions. If you want them well done like we do, you'll be looking at them like that there. If you want them a little less well done, then you won't be cooking them as long. You'll just be throwing them in, cooking for about maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then just dropping it right into your soup there. Now try not to get too much oil in there. A little bit of olive oil will never hurt anything because you are cooking with ditalini, and the oil will help prevent it from sticking. But you don't want to add too much oil. And let's just go ahead and give those a gentle push off the skillet into the pool. Geronimo! That, and that, and that. The rest of the oil can be discarded. Rinse it down with hot water so it doesn't do any damage to your drain. And then rinse this off and rinse this off right away, and that way you don't have to worry about it later. Okay, that's all you'll need that skillet for. We're still going to need the spoon. We're going to get all of the rest of the ingredients ready, and that means draining off our tomato. Actually, no. You know what? Leave the tomato. Leave the tomato juice in there. Leave that tomato juice in there. What you want to drain is the carrot juice and the spinach juice for sure. But the tomato juice will actually help add a less bland flavor for your Italian wedding soup. And we're also going to get these navy beans ready too. And we need to drain the navy beans because look at all that. Look at all that liquid up there. You just take the lid there and just drain all of that, because a lot of that is just the juice from the beans, the water, the oil, everything, and it just thickens. So go ahead and drain out as much of that as possible too. You might want to leave a little bit in there for thickness. If you want to make it a little thicker soup, then you might want to leave that juice in there. So without further ado, let's drop the navy beans down. The last ingredient you're going to add is the spinach, because spinach does not take very long to cook at all, and you don't want to overcook your spinach either. Take your navy beans and stir them really good in there. Now this is going to be a lot of Italian wedding soup, and it's starting to look like a wedding, but we're just getting started. Okay, now that's getting good and hot. Now let's go ahead and add our tomato with some of the juices in there to actually give it a little extra flavor of tomato. We're using 1 can of that, 1 can of carrots, 1 can of navy beans, 1/2 of a large yellow onion, about 25 to 30 meatballs, and 8 ounces of ditalini. Everything is cooking together wonderfully, and that spinach is going to be the last thing you add. If you want to, you can add green onion to this. You can add fresh cut basil. You can add fresh cut parsley. You can add fresh cut anything, any of those spices, fresh cut thyme or rosemary. Any of those spices will go great in this. But what we're after though is just a mixture of all these different flavors coming together, and that's what's going to go into your gullet there. And this is mainly why we call it an Italian wedding, because like we said, we are marrying vegetables with the meats and some noodles into a soup. And this is, consider your stock pot the wedding chapel of Little Italy. And get the spinach ready because we're going to be adding it here in a moment. But let's take a look at the onion. Look at the onion. Look how well those softened up in that broth, just in that short time. This is wonderful stuff. And you got plenty of seasonings in there. You can see all those Italian seasonings mixed up in there. If you get real close in there, you can see those green seasonings. Look at that, just going all over your foods. And that's going to go all over too. That's going to get all over your foods, and luscious, luscious and beautiful. And last, certainly not least, let me take on the ditalini real quick and see how far we are. Okay, they're starting to, and then ditalini doesn't take long to cook either, so you want to make sure that they reach al dente before you add your spinach. Because if you ever want to know how far you're coming along, just take a look at the ditalini. And you don't even have to use ditalini if you don't want to. You don't have to use navy beans if you don't want to. You can leave out the tomatoes, leave out the carrots. You can add beans, add peppers, add celery. We don't have any celery though. I would add celery, but that would be really good to add. You can add anything you want to. You can take away anything you want to, but as long as you put in vegetables and meatballs in chicken broth and seasonings. You can use any seasonings you want to. Now, let me try some of this broth. Because the best part about being a chef, and especially a soup chef, is you get to try the broth as you cook it. And this will ensure that you have enough seasonings in there for when your meal is done. Needs more garlic salt. Yes, it does. It needs more garlic salt. So I think maybe I've only added just a little bit. We need a lot more garlic salt than that. Make sure it's garlic salt, not garlic powder, because you need salt to make it taste less bland. Otherwise, it's tasting wonderfully good. Now look at the color of this broth and what it turned into. Since we have some of the tomato juice, you got this little tiny tint of red in there. And it's also from the juices that are coming off of the tomato in the cooking process. Notice the tomato isn't as deep red as it used to be anymore. Now it's kind of like this brighter color red. Now let's take it about the ditalini. Oops. Oh, that one flew back into the pot. Okay, here we go. It's hot, it's hot, it's hot. No, not even close. Do your broth once again. That's much better. Adding that really helps. That is so much better. So let's go ahead and continue to cook this until the ditalini is just about nice and al dente, but it's a little too firm for that right now. So we're going to wait a couple of minutes here for this stuff to really cook up, and then we'll rejoin with you when we're ready to add our spinach. Look at this, boiling and boiling, bubbling everywhere. Look at that, look at that. That is some hot soup. Look at that onion too. That is just what we need. Here we are, we're going to add, let's just add our 1 can of shrimp for now. You can use canned shrimp, frozen shrimp, either one. Fresh shrimp might take a lot longer to cook, so give that a good stir. Stir it up real good with the spinach there. And then let's this cook. Now you see your ditalini is almost ready because see it rises above everything else. And it mixes so well with everything else. Okay, I think we can get away with doing the other can of shrimp in there too because you need a lot of that stuff. And sometimes, you know, if you don't like spinach, especially canned or frozen, then feel free to use a substitute. You can use lettuce. You can use escarole if you want to. You can use greens, collard greens, mustard greens, any kind of greens you want to. Add any kind of greens in there. Anything that you want, because this is your recipe for Italian wedding, and nobody should tell you what is right and what is wrong. There we go. Now let this cook with the spinach in there, and it don't take too long. As a matter of fact, the heat from the soup and the broth, everything coming together, will be enough to heat this up. Just stir this in real good. Stir it in, stir it around. Okay. Now look at this. Ditalini is just rising and ready to go. Look at that. It's just rising right up to the top there. That's a good indication that you know your ditalini is ready for your spinach to be added. And we're only going to be cooking this, after we've added our spinach, we're going to be cooking this for about, let's go ahead and leave that in there for about 5 minutes. While we're doing that, let's come over here to get some bowls. So I'm pretty sure that we have some hungry people here that are interested in trying out homemade Italian wedding.
Now you can smell the spinach.
Oh yes, when you can start smelling that spinach, you know it's nearing completion and ready to serve. And it is such an easy soup to put together. Very, very simple, very easy ingredients. Anything that you can find in the stores and anything you can add with as much or as little as you want. As much as you think you need to feed. And there you have it. Italian wedding with your spinach, your ditalini, your carrots, your tomatoes, your meatballs, navy beans. All of those ingredients coming together with all those spices and seasonings coming together as one beautiful Italian soup. Yeah, this is going to be some really good stuff. I can already smell it. I can taste it right now. Now I'm hoping I used enough meatballs in there, but in case you have any questionable doubts, you could always add extra. As a matter of fact, that might not be too bad of an idea. Since all those ingredients are in there, I think I'll add more meatballs. That's not a bad idea. Now, fortunately, these meatballs don't take that long to cook. Now, oh yeah, they didn't even freeze up yet. Cool. These meatballs will cook right up. In fact, let's just add a whole bag. So much for meatball subs. It's going into our soup. Alright, so let's mix all those meatballs. That's what we call Italian wedding. Now look at that. Now let's just mix those meatballs in real good. Now usually we know exactly how many to add when we start the recipe, and that way everything gets cooked together. Unfortunately, sometimes along the way, you second guess things. And then you have no choice but to make a snappy decision right on the spot. So let this go ahead and cook a little more because we added those extra meatballs that haven't had a full chance to cook. But they won't take long to cook either because they're already pre-cooked. That's the beauty part about these meatballs. They're already pre-cooked. But if you are making meatballs from scratch, then all you need to remember are just some key ingredients. You need ground beef or ground turkey or ground chicken, 2 eggs, about use a pound, 2 eggs, or if you're going to use this much, I'd probably suggest 2 pounds. 2 pounds of meat to 2 eggs beaten, added to the meat, and then add breadcrumbs, about a cup's worth of breadcrumbs, mix all that together. And you then round it up into small balls until you have plenty enough to add to Italian wedding soup. Alright. Now, hopefully I can sort of discern where some of those extra meatballs went to, but I can't really tell. Ooh, that one's hot. Ooh, that one's hot. Ah, that one's hot. That one's hot. Now you can go on all throughout your entire soup to test each one of your meatballs to see if they're all blazing hot. But I say, you know what, let's call this recipe a wrap and serve. Turn that off and let it sit for a little while you come over here and get some bowls. Just a little bit of the juice extracted so that it wouldn't spill it all over. Good. Now since those are also very quick to cook, I'm just going to use a ladle to stir that in there good. The heat from the soup will definitely heat up those tomatoes. Don't have to worry about that. Because look at that steam. You don't even need the fire on to cook the rest of those tomatoes up. Tomatoes being a vegetable and very light one at that will not require too much heat for them to cook. So just kind of mix them in real well. The heat from the soup will take care of that as it is. So 2 cans, so let's go ahead and recap this the proper way in case you're making this at home. We used 8 ounces of ditalini noodles, 1 can of carrots because there's plenty of them in there, 2 cans of spinach, 1 can of navy beans, 2 cans of tomatoes, and an entire bag of meatballs. All blended together to make Italian wedding soup. Now you know what ingredients you want to add or which ones you want to take away. Maybe there's too many of one kind of ingredient, like spinach. Maybe you only like just a little bit of spinach. Maybe you like a lot of spinach. Maybe you want celery, throw some celery in there. Maybe you want some, a little spice it up, throw some peppers in there. Maybe you want to add an extra ingredient or two. You know, maybe you want to add saffron in there. If you can afford it, add saffron. But all it boils down to is you know what you like. And just to remember, the key ingredients in an Italian soup, or an Italian wedding soup, is the meatballs, the vegetables, and that's all there is to it, and the chicken broth. So there you have it. Italian wedding. Let's serve this up. Ooh. Ow, that's hot. I got a little splatter on it.
Not cold.
No. Well, what happened was I went to spoon it out, and one of the pieces of spinach kind of jumped out and landed on my hand.
Ooh, fun.
Okay, let's get another one served up. Ditalini is the perfect noodle to use in this recipe too, by the way. Okay, a couple of ladles full there. Now remember, the more meatballs you add, the meatier it gets. So you know how many meatballs you want to add, or how many vegetables you want to add. Maybe you're a meat-eating kind of guy, so you're going to be marrying meat against meat. So that could also possibly be an idea too. You can add more meats or less meats. It's all up to you. And you know that you got plenty left over for later. But as for a taste testing Cuisinetic, I'm going to go ahead and taste some of this out. How many meatballs did I give myself? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. Yeah, 5. Okay. I'm saying there better be more than just 2.
That does smell good.
It's hot.
Yes,
It is very hot. I hate it when it touches my... I'm going to put this down. And now we are going to see how well this tastes. Italian wedding soup. We've got a myriad of different ingredients there. We've got your carrot, you got your tomato, got spinach all around, you got meatballs, and ditalini. Not to mention your chicken broth, and some of the juices from the tomato. I don't have any meatball in there.
And you said navy beans is in this?
And navy beans, yeah. That's also in there too.
Never seen navy beans before.
They are a very soft bean, almost identical to that of pinto beans, only a little smaller and a little softer. Other than it's being really hot, This is a good mix of flavor. So, try it at home and see how easy it is to make Italian wedding soup. Okay, now we gotta do something comical, like we did in the intro. Let's see.
I think there's enough comedy in there.
I think there is too.
Ow, hot, burning my hand.
Yeah, and I think we did the whole wedding sequence in the beginning, so I think that could be used actually toward the end. So, this would be a very good soup. Just make sure that all your ingredients get along together because they are married after all, and you don't really want a divorce happening in your meal. Now, I don't know about you, but if there's any arguing going around, I know of a really good marriage counselor. His name's Larry Vialdente. Anyway, take care everybody, and may all of your meals be good ones. Do you, can of leaf spinach, take these meatballs to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, till death do you part? I do. Do you meatballs, take this leaf spinach, to be your lawful wedded wife, to have and to hold, for richer or for poor, sickness and in health, till death do you part? Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, me too. Can I have the ring, please? Oh, sure. There's the ring. I now pronounce you meatball and vegetable. You may now kiss. Okay, now if you're waiting for these things to kiss, then there's something seriously wrong with you people. Let's get back into a positive level. The wedding is off now. Get a divorce and let's eat something. Oh, I wonder how many people had to go to the bathroom after hearing that. Oh, stop it already. God, I gotta go. Got a nice singeing over here. Get off there. Got a nice singe. Got a carrot stuck there. Got a nice singeing of your carrots. Be careful.
Singeing of the carrots?
Yep, see, singe, singe, singe. Onion. Let me say that again. And not to forget, a very important ingredient or an important utensil to fish soup out, which is a ladle.
Ingredient?
Ingredient, yeah. We're going to add one chopped ladle. Yes. Never go wrong without the wrong ingredients, and you need a ladle in your soup. That's one of the key ingredients, yeah, right. The heat's... Oh, I was just going to turn on the sink and have the can open. The faucet's going to open the can of tomatoes for me.
I'm getting confused with our utensils now.
With our appliances and our kitchen things? Yeah.